Hi, Joe. So, in some of your instructions, you talk about, you say the statement, you are the observer of what is happening. And I, in my experience earlier intellectually and both in experience at various levels of clarity, found that the observer is a phantom, it just really doesn't exist. Um, and intellectually, I put it together. Every day I go to sleep, and really the observer is gone. And in direct experience also it's happened. So when your instructions come forth in terms of you are the observer of what is happening, how should I receive it? Because I tend to block it away because that kind of doesn't sit too well with how I've learned to perceive or at least understand things.
Hmm. Good question. So you are the observer, you are the observed, and my actual instruction on the deepest level is you are the knower of appearance, which is slightly different from the observer. So there is a doctrine on the stages of awakening, and it's a paradox because they are all true. So when I talk about the absolute, I would say that someone who is completely unaware, they've never been introduced to this type of discussion. Their name is Peter, and they're walking around being Peter. They are the absolute. They are fully blazing as the absolute because there is only one. So nothing is left out. Then let's say Peter joins a spiritual community and they practice yoga and doing stuff with crystals. And he changes his name to Peter Yoga Crystal, right? So now he's going around with this identity of Peter Yoga Crystal. He's still fully blazing as the absolute, but there's a strong sense of self there. It's an improved sense of self because let's say Peter used to be a bank teller and he didn't like that. Now he's Peter Yoga Crystal and he's really enjoying this. It's still the absolute. It doesn't mean it's an awakening, but it's the absolute. Now he starts to meditate and he begins to notice he can watch himself. Wow, I can watch Peter Yoga Crystal and I can watch Peter Bank Teller. Now he's starting to become the observer. And he says, wow, I'm the observer. I'm Peter the observer, maybe, or I'm just the observer. So now he has a new identity. That's also the absolute. And let's say he goes deeper and he starts to realize even the observer is a phantom and there's only pure beingness. Now he's dropping away the identities. So each identity became, well, the second one's the same as the first, just different words, but the observer identity is a subtle version of a sense of self. It's less robust. If someone's walking around as the observer, they're probably less attached to their life, but there's still a sense of self. When they move into, wow, even that is a phantom, now they're just being pure beingness. They've left the self at the door. They've left the identity at the door, and they're just resting in this sense of beingness. I am not my thoughts. I am not my mind. I am not the observer. I am not my past. And let's say this person continues to practice, they will then start to realize, wait there, if everything is empty, then what is the point of me saying I'm not my emotions?
Exactly.
I'm not the observer because they're empty anyway. So now I'm
Mm.
awareness. I'm awakened awareness. I'm all experience. None of it is all self-knowing. Each appearance is self-knowing. It creates an
Even
illusion.
I am sounds too much to me at times. Even saying I am is a little bit too much.
Yeah, exactly. Because where it starts to move to is there is nothing to be said. The pure, when I say that we are the juncture of the knower and the known, that is the most precise way I've come about to use the English language to describe nothing at all.
Mm.
Now, I know in Sanskrit, the language is a non dual language. So they may have words which are more appropriate or more precise, but English is a dualistic language. So it's the greatest way I've been able to establish the final, that the non-identity of nothingness is the juncture of the knower and the known. And when you rest there, there doesn't need to be a person, a past, a future, any objects. That they're completely labelless. Nothing has a label. Nothing crystallizes. So in the juncture of the knower of the known, nothing ever becomes a thing because there isn't any time. So nothing becomes an object. It's the non-crystallization of these appearances. And this is where in Dzogchen they talk about the great freedom. It's the freedom, it's perceptual freedom in whatever's arising. It's being perceived, but there's no description, there's no attachment, there's nothing there. There's just perceptual freedom in the immediacy of whatever life renders. Whatever renders as awakened awareness, there is just the liberated perception of it. I sometimes try to describe it like when you have a fire and you have the flickering of a flame, and the flame is you can't grasp it. It almost doesn't seem to exist, and it's just burning off. It never becomes a thing. And that is almost how I see, if I meditate on it, that's how I see this rendition of life. It's just flickering without becoming anything at all.
So then the answer is for, so my entire spiritual practice as might have been cleared from just a second, by a deep sense of suffering since childhood, not childhood, so teenage years. And I've found that the most assured way of dropping that is to be able to let go of there being a sufferer at all. That seems to be the uh, I don't know, the panacea, the ultimate way of even temporarily being able to handle uh, any suffering or a sense of suffering. So even the idea that I'm the knower feels too much to me. Even if I say that I am the knower, it's just a little too much for me. Even if I'm not feeling it at this moment, I mean, of course, I struggle with many things. It's not that I don't, but uh, for me to practice on creating any separation is a little too much at this stage. So if you give this instruction, is it appropriate for me to not consider a separation in what
Yeah,
is perceived and what is?
yes, I absolutely. If the most accurate way to describe our nature is not to say anything at all,
Yes. Okay.
and so for you, when you're living in your life, that might be the most beneficial thing, just to not say
It
anything at
seems
all.
to be. It seems to be. Okay.
Like if I did that, then it would be an interesting call. So
Okay. Thank you.
we face limitations, but yes, the question that
Yes.
you're asking is, but I wanted to say one other thing to you is you don't I hope you don't take this the wrong way because I don't think it's what you mean, but I just wanted to emphasize it that you don't
Please.
need to ask me permission to, I know that you're not, but I just want to emphasize that, to grow in your understanding of your true nature beyond me as a teacher, any teaching,
Yes.
any previous teachings, any Buddhas, any gurus, future or past. You have complete permission to outshine their teachings and discard them in your own practice. My actual job is to become obsolete.
I think that's the Indian in me. So it's taken me decades to be able to do that. Yeah, I can do it now. Yeah. And so, as you probably are well aware, the role of a teacher or a guru is too revered. And so I think that's the Indian in me kicking in when I'm taking permission.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I'm not against the guru structure. I think it can be very, very useful. The devotional path can be extremely liberating for certain people, but it is the responsibility of the guru to know when to say, okay, you cannot do that anymore. But not many do that. But there's a point where you can say, right, now be gone. Right?
Yeah, I mean, in the previous call when I hope I'm not taking too much time. This will be the last thing I say. In the previous call, I mentioned how I took the teachings early on and made it about how I can use these teachings to avoid suffering. That was when I was taking a lot of the traditional teachings as they were, and I was not able to do the shift that you were mentioning. It's only when I was able to let go of that and try to go beyond what was just literally being instructed, that's when some change happened.
Yeah.
So I am
Well,
able to do that.
you're not taking too much time, and there's no hands up yet. There probably will in a bit, but I just want to say that I have a two-path approach to this. And in the coaching group that I've taken over, that I started with my friend, he did it for a bit. I'm now taking it back. In that path, we take a non-dual therapy approach, right, to suffering. And in this group, we take a pure non-dual approach. And the pure non-dual approach is just to allow to know your true nature, and the insight resolves suffering. But for some people, particularly us lot in the West who grew up with like, or not even the West, just modern world, so much trauma, so much density, so much suffering. In that group, we actively allow the actual trauma. So in that group, I won't say you're the juncture of the knower and the known. I will say, sense whatever your deep sadness about this situation and completely allow that. And what this does, it works more with the vasanas, with the habitual
Yes.
tendencies, where with
Yes.
pure non-duality, the habitual tendencies, we're not really looking at them. They are a byproduct. The dissolving of them is a byproduct of your liberation. But sometimes that can take a long time, or people are more densely held in cause and conditions. So in the other path is to approach that directly, which is like, I'm triggered through a past cause and conditions. I'm not able to see it as pure awareness. So instead, you allow the emotion in your body mind, and they both end up at the same place. But just one works on the Western traumas that we all carry, and the other one is a non-dual approach. And I do both because I think that it sometimes what you can end up with is people who are very liberated from their suffering, but they're still creating dysfunctional patterns in relationships with themselves and others, but they're liberated. And that's something which Ramana Maharshi used to talk about, not quite in the same way, but he used to talk about you need to dissolve your vasanas for your liberation. And that somehow got lost in the successive years. And that became more about there's nothing to do, you're perfect as you are, which is true. But
Yes.
if you've had a very troubled experience in your life, you might be liberated, but still manifesting behaviors that you necessarily don't want to be. And non-duality isn't about changing. So the other approach, by allowing those emotions, we undo the vasanas that are created in the body and mind. So if you do want to talk about it, you can email me and I can tell you about the group.